Hi, my name is Lauryn Aguilar, and this is my adoption story. So to start my adoption story, here's an introduction to my adoptive parents and my biological parents. And to make this less confusing, I call my adopted parents simply my parents because that's what they are to me, and I believe that a parent is who raises and loves you and not just who brings you into this world. My biological mom and my mom are sisters, and they are just about 11 months apart in age. My biological father and mother had 3 boys before I was born, and they lived in a small trailer in Missouri, and they didn't have a lot of money, so my parents would take my biological siblings for summers so that my biological mother could work more to make more money. My biological father was addicted to meth, and he was also making it as well. He had anger issues and was very physically and verbally abusive to my biological mother and my biological siblings. When my biological mother found out that she was pregnant with me, she decided that she didn't want to raise another child in this environment, so she asked her sister and brother-in-law if they would adopt me when I am born, aka my mom and my dad. My parents had previously found out that it was a very big risk if my mom was to have children, so this wasn't a hard decision for them to make. The original agreement was guardianship so that my parents wouldn't have to pay so many lawyer fees, but my parents said no, we want the full adoption, and that's what they agreed on. Another agreement that was made was that my biological mother asked if she could still name me, and she wanted to name me April Rose. My parents decided that they would allow that until my adoption fully went through, and once I was legally adopted in court, they would change my name to what they wanted it to be, Lauryn Olivia Aguilar. Through the pregnancy, my parents would fly back and forth from Las Vegas to Missouri often. So let's fast forward to them finding out the gender of me. Now, my biological mother was 100% sure that she would have another boy, as she already had 3 boys previously. But my parents made sure that if I did turn out to be a girl, that she would still be okay with giving me up for adoption since I would be her only girl that she would birth. When they found out that I was a girl, it made things harder on my biological mother to give me up for adoption, but she knew that it would be the right thing to do. When it was time for birth, it was a long 24 hours. I decided to be stubborn and get the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, so I had to be a C-section. I was born on February 18th, 2003, at 7 p.m., weighing 7 pounds and 14 ounces. My biological mother had 3 days to fully decide on the adoption according to the adoption laws in Missouri, and she knew that she still wanted me to have a better life, so she stuck to the adoption. But it wasn't all done and over so fast. In the state of Nevada, biological parents have 8 months to decide on the adoption, so it wasn't fully official just yet. When it was time for me to go home, we had to take a train from Missouri to Arizona since newborns can't fly because they don't know how to pop their own ears. It took 3 days to get from Missouri to Arizona on the train. Once we got to Arizona, my cousins were supposed to pick me up, but they had forgotten about the time change, so they were an hour late. It was cold and raining at the time, so my parents begged a restaurant that wasn't supposed to be open for another hour to let them in, and they refused until my mom opened her jacket and showed them me, all wrapped up in my mom's jacket to protect me from the rain and the cold. Once my cousins arrived, they drove us home from Arizona to Las Vegas. Once I arrived at home, my grandma was waiting at the house to finally meet her 3rd grandchild. The following week, all of my parents' family came down to finally meet the newest member of the family. 3 months after I was born, my biological father was sent to prison after he was found in the woods trying to make meth. During the 8-month process of waiting to be legally adopted, my parents feared that my biological mother would change her mind and want to take me back. The day finally came. On October 15, 2003, my parents were in front of the court to fully finalize the adoption. On this day, I legally became Lauryn Olivia Aguilar. So now I'm going to talk about my journey of finding out about my adoption and finding out who my biological parents were. My parents decided that they wouldn't keep the adoption for me, and they told me at the early age of 6 years old. And they explained to me what adoption means, but they didn't tell me the details of my adoption, and they decided that when I was ready to know who my biological parents were, I could ask them whenever I was ready. When I would visit my biological mom, who to me is my aunt or my Nina, and my biological brothers, I always felt some sort of connection to my biological brothers who were just cousins to me, but I didn't really question it too much. My mom would always ask me if I was curious or ready to know who my biological parents were, and one day she said to me, "I just hope that when you are ready to know, you don't think of me and your dad as anything other than your parents because we love you so much and we don't want to lose that title." But I knew that I would never do that to my parents because I loved them so much and I knew that they were meant to be my parents. When I was in 8th grade, I decided to snoop around my house one day as I was super bored and I came across a binder named Baby Photos. I thought to myself, oh, I don't think I've ever seen this before. And curiosity definitely killed the cat on this one. Upon opening the binder, a photo of my biological parents was the first thing that I had seen, and under it was written Lauryn's birth parents. It honestly wasn't as big of a shock as some people would think, but I sort of guessed it when I felt close to my biological brothers and was told that my birth name was April Rose, which was close to my biological mother's name. I also sort of assumed that my Nina was my biological mother whenever I would be told that I looked just like my mom and my Nina looked alike. I didn't tell my parents that I found this binder for reasons that I honestly really don't know. Although this wasn't much of a shock finding out who my biological parents were, I still dealt with a lot of confusion and sadness. The main two things that ran through my head was, well, why was I given up but my brothers weren't? And I wish I could have grown up with them because I love them so much. Just a week after finding this out, we flew to Missouri for one of my biological brother's weddings. This was the first time that I had seen them after finding out who they were to me other than just my cousins and my Nina. I would go to sleep crying while we were there because it was a lot to take in all at once after only finding out just a week ago. The one thing that hit me the hardest about this was when the photographer for my biological brother's wedding called for immediate family photos. I watched them all take photos together, and I tried to keep it together since no one knew that I had known. By this time, my biological father was out of prison, and he was nervous to be around me at the wedding, but I remember catching him taking photos of me, and I sort of just brushed it off. I would write about my thoughts on this in one of my school binders on loose leaf paper. One day, I left the papers out by accident in my room, and my mom went to clean my room that day and found the papers. When I got home from school, my parents sat me down and explained my adoption fully to me, and from there, I no longer felt the sadness and confusion, and I was once again content with life. Once word got out about me knowing, I spent a week in Missouri with each one of my biological brothers, who I now call brother cousin, and my biological mother. This made everything feel normal and get over the awkwardness of me now knowing. When my biological father heard that I had known, he asked to spend the day with me since he didn't get the chance to know me as everyone else did. And I decided to just give it a chance, and he told me his side of the story. He said something that set me back though. When I would say my mom and my dad, he would stop me and say, well, I'm your dad, and your biological mother is your mom, and your parents were just your adoptive parents. After this, I kept quiet, and I couldn't wait to just go home. I told my parents what he said, and I told them that I didn't want to speak to him unless I wanted to, and since then, I have not spoken to him. I'm so thankful that my biological mother decided to give me a chance at a better life, and I couldn't thank my parents enough for fulfilling that. I was lucky enough to have an adoption through family since I am still able to be close to my biological family. I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for my parents and my biological mother, and that is my adoption story.